It's to live out our baptismal call of holiness with a more intentional choice. Hello, I am Brother Francisco Whitaker, and this is All Good in the Brotherhood. For today's episode of Benedictine Spirituality 101, we will be discussing the third of the three Benedictine vows, which is the vow of Conversatio. Now that word, conversatio, or the full vow name, which is Conversatio morum, means conversion. Now, it is not the same conversion as we might think of, like converting from one religion to another, or converting completely a lifestyle of one that is very sinful to one that is more virtuous, or even a conversion of intention, where we chose to do something for one reason, but then flipped our minds and then chose to do it for a better one. That is conversio. It does have a Latin word, just like conversatio is Latin, but they mean two different things. So a conversio is a true, full, first conversion, where we go from one way of living to another. It's kind of a 180. Versus conversatio, which is the vow that I take as a monk, which is a daily conversion. It's a slow turning process. Whereas conversio is a 180, conversatio is a slow turn. And the reason for that is because it is a slow process to become who God calls us to be. We first need that initial conversion to begin on the path, to start the path. But that could not be all that the Christian living is. If all Christian living was just convert first time around, well, then way more people would want to be Christians, right? Because it seems like a free ticket to heaven. All I got to do is, say yes once, and that's good for me. But no, we have to daily convert, daily choose to be holier, daily choose to follow Christ more fervently, daily choose the virtuous thing, to take on habits of good actions. That's what conversatio is to intentionally choose each day to become more and more the monk that God calls me to be. To become more and more the Christian, the Catholic that God calls you to be. It's to live out our baptismal call of holiness with a more intentional choice. So conversatio is to slowly grow and change our manner of living, to conform more and more with the will of God. It's taken one step at a time, little by little. And the reason it's a vow for the monks is because Benedict says you can't just enter the monastery and boom, perfection. You're the ideal monk as soon as you join. It is a ladder that we have to ascend. It's a process. It's a step-by-step process. And so we take a vow to desire, to choose, to swear to God and our community that I will take part in that process. I'm not going to sit idly by and expect other people to do things for me or God to just change me. I must step in. I must play my part. I must actively choose. Now, does that mean the conversion process is completely our effort? No, that would be a Pelagianistic idea to say, if I do enough of the right things, God just gives me what I want. It is God who is moving us, but we have to cooperate with that movement. And that's what conversatio is as a vow, is to say, I choose each day to try to respond to that grace of God, to be more in tune with it, to be more receptive to his movements of the Holy Spirit, to desire more what God desires and less what I desire. Now, we might struggle with one little area a lot. Maybe going back to confession over and over and over again. That is a struggle. And that's what the vow of Conversatio is meant to speak into, is that place that has not conformed fully. Because we might convert to the idea of Christianity or the idea of being a disciple of Christ, but there is a territory in our heart that has not been won. And it is a struggle in order to win that place over for Jesus. So Conversatio is to say, I will go there. I will go to that place. I will choose to try and change that place by whatever means I feel that God is calling me to do so. So that might be fasting, extended times of prayer, counseling, spiritual direction, having a fraternity. All of these places are opportunities for us to choose the conversatio, the daily steps towards being more and more the Christian, or in my case, the monk that God desires me to be. Now, that can sometimes be a place of discouragement. When we try and we set our minds to wanting to be holy or wanting to make these little steps of conversion more and more towards Christ, but we keep on stumbling. Well, Benedict gives a really good word of encouragement. He says to never despair in God's mercy, to always hope in God's mercy, never despair. Because even if our conversion is slow, and those things that we desire to change, as St. Paul says, I do the thing I hate, and the very thing that I should do, I do not do. Even we might struggle with that. That does not mean conversatio has been thrown out the window. It means that maybe this is a slow and painful process. That's why Benedict says it's a school for the Lord's service, the monastery, and it is one that we don't graduate from until we die. We are constantly in this school, and he says it's actually even a military school because we are fighting always with those things that would keep us from becoming more and more the monk God calls us to be. Now, conversion of heart cannot be done alone. We can't only choose to be good. Us ourselves alone choose to be holy, right? We can't convert our own hearts. That requires God. He places a desire on our hearts first, and we must lean into that desire. Conversatio is to choose to say yes to the desire to be better that God first places in our hearts. And it also cannot be done in a human vacuum. I need community around me. That's the stability connection to conversatio, is that stability I have to this place and these people allows me to have others call me out at times or invite me to be better. Say, hey, Francisco, you need to shore some things up here. Or encourage me, hey, I know you've been struggling with this, but you seem to be doing better. It's what allows a full expression of who we are. And it allows me to know that, one, there are things that maybe I'm blind to that I need to convert to, that others see. But two, to not be totally bent out of shape when I think, I never am getting any further here, that someone sees it. And obedience allows us opportunities for conversion, because there might be a task or something the abbot wants me to do I don't want to do. But under obedience, I'm supposed to do it. That's my vow, so I say yes. And if I lean into my vow of conversion, I say, okay, well, maybe I don't want to do this, but the abbot sees in something in me that he wants to be doing this task. Or he needs a person, and he's chosen me. I could choose to continue to reject and continue to be bitter about that, or I can lean in and pray for the grace to become more and more the monk God calls me to be, that conversion, which might realize, actually, this is something that's very good for me. Obedience is an opportunity and an avenue for our conversion to be lived out more effectively. So, when God calls us to these things, we must be first patient. Conversatio requires us to be patient with ourselves. And then when we see growth, to be grateful. And when we're grateful, we recognize everything comes from God, and we desire Him more. That desire then grows us to become better. And then we recognize those things that aren't as good as they should be. We're patient with those. When we improve, we're grateful, and it repeats. Conversatio is a constant repeating process, and it's beautiful. So for those at home, if you're not in a monastery, if you're not a monk, how can you live conversatio? Choose one little area, not 10. Habit-forming experts say trying to change 10 different areas will result in changing none of them. Choose one little area in which your life could be more conformed to a disciple of Christ. A little bit more prayer. Time with an intentional, holy, good community. Maybe some fasting. Try practicing silence more often. Spiritual reading. Works of charity and generosity towards others. Times of service. Being quiet and humble when you could make your opinion known. All of those are areas that require a little conversion. But if we choose a little, slowly God can grow them into a lot so that we can become the person that God calls us to be. And so, in doing so, prepare ourselves to be fully who we are supposed to be in eternity with God in heaven. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Benedictine Spirituality 101. I am Brother Francisco Whitaker, and this is All Good in the Brotherhood. Have a wonderful day. God bless.